Welcome to the Future of Field Service podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today, I'm going to be talking a bit about the opportunity of embracing service and the potential it can bring to your business with Lenovo. I'm excited to welcome to the podcast today Jimmy O, who is the Director of Service Operations for Central Asia Pacific at Lenovo. Jimmy, welcome to the Future of Field Service podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me in this call. Interesting podcast, right? So
Yes.
Nice to see you. Thank you for making up time. I know it's a bit late in your time zone, and thank you for making up the time for me for this
Absolutely.
event.
My kids are in bed for the night, and I'm ready to party. So that sounds good to me. All right. No, Jimmy, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So, we have a lot of folks on this podcast, and we're talking, across industries, across geographies about this potential that service presents for business growth, business transformation, business expansion, business differentiation, right? And I think these conversations are really, really interesting because they vary a bit, industry to industry, company to company. But there is this major trend and common thread of this huge potential, right? I think that there's kind of this energy right now around almost being on the cusp of a real evolution of service and what, is possible in terms of transforming customer relationships and, really just, growing business in new and exciting ways. So I love having these conversations, and I'm excited to talk about what you see. But before we do that, let's just talk a little bit about your history, your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Lenovo.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. My name is Jimmy Ao, right? I'm currently leading Central Asia Pacific Services Operation in Lenovo, like you already shared earlier, right? So basically, I'm managing the customer service operation end-to-end, covering like the Central Asia Pacific countries, maybe to be precise, like ASEAN countries, and covering also Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, and surrounding smaller markets, right? Approximately 14, 15 markets in my region, right? And personally, I've been in this industry services like about 15 years plus, mainly in the IT, computer, and the telco industry, right? I'm a married man, 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl, right? So they are starting to grow up, right? So yeah, I think that's a short introduction about myself.
Great. How old are your children?
10 and 7.
Okay.
The boy one is 10 and the daughter one is 7.
Yeah, mine are 2 sons, and my oldest will be 6 this month, and then my youngest will be 5 this year. So they
enjoy the moment.
Yes, I know it goes fast. Okay, good. So and how long have you been at Lenovo?
About 6 years plus. I think 6 years, a couple of months. Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit then, Jimmy, about your perception of this opportunity around service that I spoke about. Tell me what your thoughts are on it, just based on your own personal experience in the different roles you've had, at the industry level, what you see specifically within Lenovo, talk a little bit about, that potential that exists and your perspective on that.
Okay, basically, right. I mean, of course, when you talk about services, there are some companies that's specializing in the services like hospitality, right? Of course, services will be their nature, right? But when it comes to like the IT industry, the company that usually selling hardware, right? So services is like after sales, right? I mean, we quite be familiar with people calling after sales services. So I mean, services only happen after sales. Right. In fact, maybe not all customers will ever experience the services in the past, right? So maybe only, let's say, maybe if the failure rate is 2-3%, right? So assume if you're selling 1 million machine, maybe only 2-3% customer will ever see you, right? Will ever experience what's so-called services. I mean, that could be something in the past, right? But I think seeing the futures, right? Maybe it's happening now. Services is starting to change, right? I mean, they are transforming. At least from my own view, right? Now we are seeing services as something that may start as as the starting point when we want to talk to our customers,
Mhm.
right? It could be like if you also feel everything now being like a tech like a services. I mean, people quite familiar with device as a services. Even now, you're buying software. Right? In the past, you're buying like application, need to pay upfront, very expensive. But now you can buy with what was subscription. It's also part of the right. So you buy as per your usage, right? I think people are also start to shift the perception from services as after sales with services as something to start a conversation, right? And if people in the past always thinking services as a cost center, I think people now start definitely changing they need to change, right? The mindset that it's not about the cost anymore. It's about how to build the image of your company with the services. In fact, how you can start making revenue, making like the profit itself from selling services, right? So pretty much what I can feel from my own view, service has transformed, right? And the transformation is now getting even faster. Not sure if the COVID is could be one of the reasons, right? But I guess once we start to do this kind of working from home, school from home, most of the customers of a company, they're expecting to have more solution, right? So solution itself might not be just a PC, right? I mean, you can always buy PC, you can always buy laptop, smartphone, but what is the solution provided to accompany those devices, right, to meet your requirement, right? That's definitely something that is hitting up, right? Like I saw some of the market that quite interesting is the education, how we try to provide solution to our education, right? Like school, government, right? How they can make the remote learning, remote working, right, to be more effective, right? How the teacher could use some kind of whiteboard, but it's going to be like online, so the kids could see what the teacher are writing. Right? I think it's better than you just send a PDF file. Many people might not have the interaction, right? So I guess, like it or not, we are definitely going there pretty much very fast these days.
You know, I think that's a really good point, Jimmy, about, you know, to what degree did COVID amplify or multiply this potential for service, right? And you know, the example that you shared around education, it makes me think, you know, when you think about as a product-based business looking to embrace the service opportunity, right? There's a lot of layers to that, right? I mean, because there's on one side of the coin, you have businesses that really see that potential and they're very, you know, intent on sort of leading that charge and, you know, leveraging service to seize that potential. And then there's, you know, businesses on the other hand that are very comfortable with the product centric approach and they're very, you know, rooted to how they've historically done things. And so that's tough, right? You know, what that mindset is dictates a really different path. But you know, if you want to really leverage the service opportunity, you have to become more customer focused, right? So it's one thing to know as a product manufacturer, here's a product that our customers want to buy. But to your point, customers can buy that product a lot of different places. I think when you look at leveraging service strategically, what you're really talking about is problem solving. And I think that what happened with COVID, particularly around the education topic, is it surfaced very apparently a challenge that was easy to see, identify, and start to innovate around, you know? But the reality is those opportunities in the form of the challenges your customers have are in every, you know, industry that you sell into, in every situation that your customers are in. It was just a really good exercise, I think, for companies that haven't already started this path to dip their toes into thinking as a service company or a solution provider instead of just a product manufacturer. Does that make sense?
Yes, agree. I mean, there could be a kind of challenge, right, on some companies that they are very familiar. I'm not saying traditional, but you know, if you're working in the hospitality industry, like it's very easy because you know everything about services, everything about knowing your customers. Customer is always right, how you can give the right things to comfort the customers. But when you think about the other company or the other businesses, right? So they might not have this kind of how to say it. The nature is not like that, right? But it doesn't mean is you cannot do. But of course, it will require some mindset change. It will require a lot of support from the leadership to understand that this is the right vision of the company we need to transform, right? I mean, having said that, right, Lenovo, luckily, we have a great support from our leadership. But in fact, not sure if you read the news, right? We did the reorg again in the last couple of months. So we set up a new organization. We call it SSG, Solution and Services Group, led by Ken Wong, right? So basically, we will start focusing this organization to think how we can give solution and services to our customers. So we have a different organization running the basic hardware or box kind of a solution. But then we have another organization that's specifically running to see how they can combine all the solution, all the kind of innovative thing from the company and sell to our customers. I think we believe if we have someone dedicated to really spend time meeting our customers, understand the requirement, right, analyzing the industry trend, they could definitely understand more, right? And by doing so, we expect things will definitely helping us to understand better and sell more solutions to our customers. Of course, the result itself, like we have a very strong year-on-year improvement on the revenue that really like really set a right things that the company has done the absolutely right direction now, right? So that's I think what we are trying to do.
Yeah.
But I also feel, right, I talk with a lot of peers in the industry. They also share similar challenge, right? Not easy to change the mindset.
Yeah.
It's definitely not only the leaders, but the team itself, right? Once you very used to sell something that physically there, like maybe hardware kind of devices, then you need to sell something that is not yet there. Even maybe you need to talk with a solution architect, how they can make a solution for the customers. It can be very customized from customer A to customer B. That might be a bit challenging at the very beginning. So yes, you are really right. That is definitely not easy. Yeah.
So what is it, do you think that there's a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, that mindset shift. Okay, so Lenovo's there, right? And I want to go back to that. But what do you think it is that gives organizations sort of that light bulb moment to see this potential and want to, you know, undergo the transformation versus just staying very set in their ways?
Okay, I think there could be a lot of starting point. First, maybe sometimes it's always like retention, right? Maybe once you hire new people, so new people start to explore the ideas, represent to the leadership, right? Then leadership start to picking up the opportunity, right? So it could be also the leadership itself. Maybe they start to change the direction of the company. They know maybe selling boxes is going to be very challenging in the future, right? Because everyone could sell the similar products, just different colors, different maybe physical appearance, but whatever is the same CPU, same memory, same hard drive, right? That doesn't make sense actually, except the brand itself and the logo and maybe some color thingy, right? So there could be a lot of starting point, but I really think that there could be somewhere that a company need to start. Right. Of course, the starting point could be very different. I mean, yeah, it depends on the company itself. But once the trigger is there, and if it started from maybe from the team, right, from the employee or from some new hire that try to propose new idea, and when it start to be picked up by the rest of the team member, then I think that could be start getting bigger and bigger. Right. But of course, you also need support from the people around you, right? Assume that it's starting from somewhere inside the company, right? And then make sure that it can be amplified, right? Maybe once the team or the people push some result, right? Then people will say, oh, somehow it's working. Maybe in the past, we never thought someone could do. But once the team start to show the result, and maybe sometime I heard in some company, the leadership itself might not be like supporting because maybe some of them are quite traditional, right? They just, okay, I'm just selling boxes. I don't really care about that, right? But maybe once this being presented and being amplified, and the people start to see, oh, amazing, right? We never thought we could do things like this. Then maybe they start to become bigger and bigger, then the company will start to pick up. So I believe there could be a lot of starting point, but the key thing is definitely the company, the executive, the leaders must support the idea. Otherwise, you can easily be like, say, this is not our bread and butter, right? So we are not going to be doing that, right? So that will be a big challenge.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that whether the catalyst for the change happens from the top down or from the bottom up, you have to have that executive support. And I think that's because this isn't a transformation that can happen in a vacuum or in a department, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that you have to have that company-wide alignment on, or you're just not going to make the progress you need to make. So it can start, you could have someone that really, spearheads the effort and articulates the business case and is very passionate about it, that brings it to leadership, but ultimately they have to be supportive of that effort. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to go back to is the group you mentioned. Remind me of the name again, that the services group. What was the first part?
SSG, Solution and Services Group.
Solution and Services Group. Yeah. I see more and more of that, right? Of companies introducing a dedicated team, group, function to really take the lead on this. And I think Madhu from Abbott, who's in the group that we're a part of. She was on the podcast, and we had sort of a whole conversation around what's the best sort of, organizational structure for service transformation, right? And you can argue different ways, but I think that, particularly for very large companies, and particularly for companies that have sort of that really deep, rich history and product, I think the idea of this dedicated team to really get it off the ground is a very smart one, because the folks that are in roles still have to focus on the day-to-day, so until you get this new go-to-market in place, and until you start to make traction with the customers and the teams, there's still a business to be run, and expecting someone to do both of those things is really hard, so I think this idea of now, I'm not saying it's an easy job, right? Like if when you have a new function like that in the business, and you of course are going to have people that are resistant to the ideas, and I'm sure it's not a walk in the park, but I think that from Lenovo's perspective, being strategic about creating that group to really drive this, I think you will get better progress that way than if you tried to do it, in the existing structure. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that, right? Definitely that is the right thing to do, right? And I think you're also quite familiar, right? When we typically think or see salesperson and services person, right? They tend to be very different. The sales is usually very outspoken, right? They're easygoing, so they can easily catch up and mingle with a lot of people. But services, they tend to be more introvert. Maybe not all, maybe it's my assumption, but it's kind of a two different type of people. Right? But now we need to sell services, right? So you need someone that can cover both kind of style. You need to be like outspoken, need to meet people, but at the same time, you need to understand how to sell the services, right? So definitely there could be a challenge, right? But I think it's a matter of how you find the right people, how you continuously giving the right training, right education, and combine with the good success story, right? So people will get the confidence, right? Maybe in the past, the services tend to be very introvert, but now they meet a lot of people now. They start to see some engagement, so they can be more proactive. At the same time, the salesperson, they learn about services, they understand, it's also quite interesting. So they can easily talk about services, sell to the customers. So always bring the conversation about services when they meet the customers. Right. So we also took quite some time, at least few years, right, to start this kind of a collaboration. But luckily, because we also have a great team inside. So those kind of transformation was not the difficult part for sure, right? So, but I understand, right? I mean, if you not getting the right person and the team itself may be not so flexible, right? You will see some, like you said earlier, some resistance, some people saying that it's not my cup of tea. I don't know how to sell services, right? So if they don't really learn and have intention to improve, that will be kind of challenge,
Right.
right? Yeah.
But I think, going back to the first point we made, a lot of it is just mindset. And I think that people's mindsets can change when they understand new insights, right? So, we talked at the beginning about the fact that just historically service is an afterthought to sales. They don't, it just hasn't been their job to sell service. It's been their job to sell hardware, right? And so if you have this team that can help them understand, no, like, here's why you should care. Here's how this can help you sell more. Here's why this is the future of the business. Maybe not 100%, but a good amount of those people may very well be excited about that and get on board and get behind it, and it is interesting, the conversation around, the need that exists, not just at Lenovo, in every company that's on this journey to upskill and reskill talent. And then also, what new positions, new roles, new skill sets do you need to bring into the business related to this change? It's a really interesting conversation.
I agree.
So one of the other things we talked about before, Jimmy, is the idea that, if you want to focus on growing service revenue, you have to be careful not to cannibalize your own ability to do that by over servicing. So let's talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think, again, right, when you start to make a clear kind of products, right, you need to really understand what will be your customers, right? That when you design a product. But when you design a solution or services, you need to understand what your customers needs, right? It could be in the past you're giving everything for free. Actually, it's not for free because there's no such a free lunch, right? We know that. So there's always be the cost being factored in inside your products, right? So it could be some customers, they don't need all the basic feature that you already incorporate inside the pricing, right? So I think by doing more upsell, we can really customize the solution to our customers, right? It's not about always getting more money from customers, right? But it also can let go some of the solution that they don't need, right? Of course, we keep upselling, like, the sales will not be letting go business without upsell, right? But it's more like we are selling the right thing to them, right? Instead of, okay, we give this package for you at a single price. But maybe customers say, I don't need these things, I don't need these things, but I need these things. Net, they are still paying the same amount, but they're getting what they need, right? I mean, by doing so, we need to make sure that we are not cannibalizing our own, because maybe some customer will be thinking, in the past, this kind of things is always for free. But actually, the customer, maybe they just don't know we have factored inside the cost. But maybe they just paying upfront, they thought it's all free, right? I mean, whatever they ask is for free. But we need to make sure that we give what they need. And those things that we are selling is not like cannibalizing our own basic operation or the service function that we are selling to them. Could be in some country, right? Definitely customer expecting very high level, means that everything must be free because that is the standard, right? So once we downgrade some of it, customer will feel, oh, why you are downgrading my services, right? I think it's not about downgrading, but it could be we have more detail, right, on what you can buy or what you can decide not to buy. Maybe if you have a big country with a different cities, in the past, maybe we give some single price for every cities. But now if they realize I have more machine in the certain location, can you give me better pricing for that? Maybe you can give me other pricing for the remote location, something like that. More customized.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this becomes a big challenge when you look at organizations that are trying to move toward more advanced services, more service contracts, offering more outcomes-based service, because as you begin that journey, it's almost like when you're introducing some of the functionality that enables you to do that, it seems there's a period of time where you're not quite ready to charge for it, you're kind of getting your bearings. And then all of a sudden you want to introduce these new offerings, and your customers are saying, hey, wait a minute, why are you charging me for this now? And it does take some thought to think about, what are the best, is it tiered offerings, or is it completely customized customer to customer, or, what that looks like. But this is an area of frustration for a lot of folks. I think this idea around, we've made these improvements, you think about things like, Internet of Things and, remote monitoring and, remote resolution, and people put these technologies in place to allow that functionality, and then kind of get a little bit stuck on how they monetize that functionality. Right. And I think, that's another, maybe topic of conversation is you can't look at this idea of incrementally improving functionality and then trying to just incrementally charge more along the way, right? Like the way I look at that is you're in essence trying to, you're on your own agenda, right? Like you're adding functionality and just trying to incrementally increase the revenue you're making simply because you have an objective to grow your service revenue, right? And that is the objective, right? But the companies that are having more success doing that are stepping back from those incremental changes or those, internal metrics. And they're really going back to what are the customer pain points, right? And what do we do to solve those? And then, looking at whether it's custom offerings or more standard offerings, but tied back to the customer needs, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think the first thing is always right. I mean, every company want to sell, want to get more revenue, more profit, right? But we should not be always use that as a starting point, right? Of course, first is we need to understand what is the customer pain point, what they need, right? Maybe now when we are talking about everything remote, right? So first is security, right? That's maybe this kind of example, right? When you're talking about your remote working, right? You need to consider your security. So that could be one pain point that customer maybe, hey, now I know everyone is working from home, their computer may be accessed by anyone. So how do I ensure safety is not compromised? Right? So when we start with that, we can see, okay, maybe we have some solutions, some VPN, some other application that can help you. That could be the starting point, how the team will start thinking about the solution. Of course, it's always chargeable, right? But something that not always about we want to get every single penny from customers. Of course, again, nothing is free, but we need to start from when customer is thinking, right? What's in it for me? I'm paying this, okay, what will I get? Right? Okay, maybe they will think this expensive or this not expensive, but the value could be different, right? Maybe if you are talking about security to small business, right? They might think, I don't need that. But when you talk to like the medium-sized company, it's everything about security, right? So again, I cannot be more transparent than this, right? Everyone will definitely be happy with more revenue, but I don't think that should be the starting point. Because when you talk about services, it's about trust, right? Trust, I mean, you are not just trying to get money from the customers, but how you can become a good advisor for the customer. Every time they have some problem, they will come to you. And you're not always about the money or charging them, right? Sometimes you give them solutions, some feedback, some idea. They can always try first if they see if they fit the requirement. So I think that could be a point when you can build the relationship better. So when they have more things to learn or to understand, they can always come to our team, right? Okay, I trust you because it's not about the money, right? But how you can help me running my business better. So I think that should be the right starting point when we engage the customers, right?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. You know, when done well, it's really a mutually beneficial value proposition, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when done well, the companies that are doing this well, they are increasing revenue, but they're doing it by helping their customers, right? And when you can figure out that right alignment, I mean, it really, really is cool to see how it comes together. But you know, on the flip side, you know, I've talked to people that say, well, I'm just really frustrated because we invested in IoT and nobody wants to buy it. And it's like, well, no, they don't want to buy it because why would they care about IoT?
Correct.
They might not even know what IoT is.
Correct.
So
Correct.
what value is it providing to them, right? And I think,
Correct.
you know, that goes back to kind of one of the points we touched on earlier, which is the criticality of really talented sales individuals having these conversations, right? Because, you know, to be able to dig in and identify those, you know, customer needs and look at how you align value and create a go-to-market, you know, I mean, you might need new people doing that than just the people that are used to selling, you know, just the boxes, right? So it's just an interesting thing. It's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, I mean, it's, you know, it's, yeah. So, okay.
It's
so
always
here,
an art, right? Sarah, sorry to interrupt, right?
No, that's okay.
Doing this thing is like an art, right? You know, leadership, managerial things is always an art. There is no single way to get the job done. Right. So I'm not a believer that by reading books or by copying someone's style that always drive the same result. Because there's always a difference in the company culture, in the people you are managing, their maturity, right? Their job scope. So you might be more flexible. You might need to be more flexible. Right. Of course, like you said, developing the team, and then next challenge is how to retain them. I mean, once you develop them, they're doing good. Okay, be their other company be okay. I want to copy the same. I just hire those guys. I pay more, right? So I think this could be a quick shortcut. But again, how we as leaders, right, need to retain those people. Need to make sure people feel comfortable working with us. They keep like innovating while contributing to the company. That will be an art, at least for myself. Right? And there's no single answer how to do that, right? You need to like be more flexible, maybe with employee A, employee B, right? You might need to have a different kind of style, right? But that's something you cannot avoid, right? It's always challenge. People are moving out. They feel like, okay, I've done enough in this company. I want to explore something more, right? So there's something that in a company, luckily again in Lenovo, right? We have this kind of culture. We allow people to move between organization, between a function, right? So we prefer them to stay in the company even in a different role rather than they move out, because we trust talent and we really consider people, employee as something that is really important. Right? Yeah, that's something I think very interesting to share because there's no single answer for such problem.
Right. So that's another thing we talked about is this idea of needing to create greater appeal for new talent, right? So, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that the service role is really changing. You know, it can't just be that, you know, more introverted, show up, fix something, and I'm on my way type persona, right? It needs to be a different type of experience. And you know, there's also, I think, some perceptions around, you know, service and field service and what that means and, you know, are those appealing career paths and things like that. So, you know, what are your thoughts around, you know, as both the skill sets needed kind of evolve and mature, and then also you know, a lot of existing talent kind of ages out of the workforce. You know, what's your thoughts on how we make service and this industry appealing for, you know, new folks?
Okay, so interesting question, right? So maybe it's just me, but if I recall back, right, during the young age, services might not be something in the top of the mind for like a student in the university, right? Maybe they want to become a doctor, an engineer, I know, a pilot, right? But scientist, but none of them thinking about the services. Usually people work in the hospitality industry, they're not really like the majority of the people, right? I'm not saying they are in the kind of not successful in the other industry, but really maybe some of them not really think about, hey, I want to do these kind of things, right? So especially when you see in some countries, I believe like people working as an engineer right on the ground might not have the higher rank. Maybe be different in the Europe or US, right? But in Asian country, so people working on the ground as a field engineer might not be something that's quite prestige for some people. I mean, that's not totally right, but also not totally wrong. It's about what will be their main interest, right? People always have their own kind of aspiration, right? So of course, by seeing the changing in trend, I think we need to start really see who is the right candidate, right? I mean, some people, some companies start to look for the like trainee, right? From the university, they try to educate, hey, this is the service industry. You can meet a lot of people, you can selling things, solution, and kind of a bigger picture of the services. So it's not about you do a break and fix, right? You come to the customer side, fix the machine, you're being paid for the labor. I think the scope will not be that kind of small anymore, right? Small thing anymore. But of course, some people still think, okay, I become an engineer, I need to go to the customer side, do break and fix, go back, right, meet another customer. So the scope maybe, I don't know, I feel they're still in the most of people mindset, right? I mean, we start looking to the university, we give some kind of in the job training to some interest student. So we try to give them a bigger view about services, not about you fixing a machine anymore, but how you can sell solution, how you can learn new technology earlier than anyone in this industry, and how you can contribute more to the company itself, right? So maybe we start with some education to the university student, right? Trying to get some good talent, right? They can do the on-the-job training. Once they graduate, they can start being shortlisted, right? To start their career in the corporate company, corporate life, right? At the same time, I think we also need to look for some kind of knowledge sharing from the experienced people, right? The service industry, giving some kind of a webinar, some kind of other event, right? To share what actually the service industry inside. Not about, again, doing kind of a small thing, right? Just serving called after sales, but it's more like can be a starting point for someone to make a new business or a new opportunity. Yeah.
And also, what do they like about it? And how has it, how is it provided for them? And, what has their career path been? Things like that. You could, I mean, even do an ad campaign out of that you use for recruiting. I think those are some good points, and a couple others that you mentioned earlier. One is flexibility, so just thinking about not only how you're flexible with employees, but, as the role changes, as the industry changes, how are you, what words are you using in your job descriptions, and what picture are you painting with what that looks like, and what parts are you playing up that might appeal to some of the folks that haven't thought about service as a career or don't even know that it's an option, and I think the other thing, like you said, within Lenovo, you'd rather them stay and move to different positions within the company. I think more and more, starting a role with some idea of growth potential and what that career trajectory could look like is really important to folks. So thinking ahead about how you articulate from the beginning that there is a lot of opportunity within the company for them, is another really smart point.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's another area I want to make sure we talk about, because this is a tough one, right? So, this whole conversation is centered around this idea of service becoming a profit center, right? And sort of all of the potential that exists there. But, to do that, you have to innovate, you have to innovate, you have to transform, and that requires investment, right? And so this is where it can get tricky, because you can have these leaders that say, okay, great. There's a big opportunity here.
Yeah,
Go make it
yeah.
happen. And then, you say, good, well, we just need to do X. And then it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Right. So how do you strike that balance between, not continually looking at service as an opportunity to cut costs and looking at, obviously managing costs, but, making some intelligent investments, in the ability to evolve and grow?
Okay, so again, the question will have a million of answer,
Yeah.
right? Because again, it's more an art, right, rather than the single answer, right? But I will say, of course, at the very beginning, it's not easy to convince the leadership, right, the executive to support your investment, right? But luckily, we on the stage that we have shown a good traction, good result. So at the end of the day, when the company got the confidence in the team, it will not be that difficult to gain some kind of investment, right? And of course, they trust it's going to be giving a good return, right? But I will say there will be no single answer for that. But in general, it's more on how the team could innovate. There's something usually they got from meeting more customers, understanding the industry change or industry trend, so they can start with something, right? And of course, when it comes to a certain investment level, it might require more approval level, right?
Mhm.
But normally, when the thing is getting bigger, right, then people will always see what to be the return of investment. This the nature of the investment, right?
Mhm.
But I would say it's not really kind of a single answer to that. You're right; it's very tricky, but it's more on the scope of the business itself, and
Mhm.
just about if you are investing certain amount, the scope will be certain size, right? Then you need to convince more people in the executive level, right, to support your project,
Mhm.
right? But in general, it's always like when you start with something and you could show a really clear benefit, right, for the company,
Mhm.
and it's aligned with industry trend. Normally, it won't be a big issue, right, for the
Mhm.
leaders to give a green light to the
Mhm.
project itself. But yeah, it's kind of a bit not easy to share how we can get it convinced, but it just naturally flow,
Right.
right? The bigger size of the innovation might definitely require bigger, different investment and different approval level, but it's just naturally flowing like that. Maybe certain
Mhm.
level, people can just give a go ahead because not so much investment, but when you're going bigger and bigger, you just need to talk with more people, convince more
Mhm.
people. It takes months, sometimes years, right, to get it started because sometimes it needs regulatory approval, legal approval, country approval. So just about the size, the scope, and the coverage. That's just
Mhm.
the nature of the green light of the project itself. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think that's something not easy to explain, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's how so some of the points that I kind of took from there, one would be look for industry context. So if
Yeah,
you can show examples of how others are benefiting from similar
correct,
investments, that
correct,
type of research and information is helpful.
correct.
The second thing is where you're able start small and build momentum, right? So if there are
Yeah,
certain areas that are either small or you are very confident in,
hmm,
start there so that you can show those successes, because once you get that initial success, then going back and saying, okay, I did this, now you can trust
correct,
me to do this next bigger thing.
correct, correct.
You're gonna have better success that way. So that makes sense. And I think the third point is just if it is something bigger, that could require months, years, right? Just
Correct.
I did a podcast a few weeks ago with a gentleman from Schneider Electric,
Mm,
Australia, and the one thing he said is he just had to be tenacious. He couldn't. He just had to not accept no and
yeah,
continue to push because he
correct,
was very
correct,
confident in the opportunity,
correct,
and he just needed to win over enough minds to be able
correct.
to move forward, and he
Move
just
forward.
didn't. Yeah, he said
Correct.
it might have been easier for me to just give up, but I just
Give
wasn't
up,
going
right?
to.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is if it's something you're passionate about, just keep
correct, correct,
keep on it. Yeah.
correct.
Okay. All right, last question for today, Jimmy. Two parts. So what's the biggest lesson you would say you've learned as a service leader?
Okay.
And then part two is, what are you most excited about looking to the future?
Okay. So I think, okay, let me start with the first one, right? The biggest lesson. So I'm a believer with people, right?
Mhm.
So I think find the right people, they talk, you can connect and align with them. That's very, very important,
Mhm.
right? Of course, you need to have, I'm not saying you need to have all the same people around you. That's not the idea. But the key thing is you need to have the right people around you. They
Mhm.
can't always be the one challenging you, finding your blind spot. That should be fine. I'm not expecting people to say yes to all of my
Mhm.
instruction, right? So I need to find the right people in the organization,
Mhm.
right? And second, we need to have and make sure they have the right mindset and right attitude, right? It's something that, I mean, if you working with the people all having their own thinking, that's okay. But in terms of the strategy, vision, aspiration, they should be carrying the similar agreement before we can move
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm.
Right? But as a team, they can be aggressive, they can be conservative, that's fine. We're not
Mhm.
talking, people always say yes, right? That's also not good, right?
So what would you say? So you're not looking for you're not looking for the same people, you're looking
Correct.
for good people. But
Yes.
what would you characterize as the common trait?
Okay. It's more on they need to suit with the role that I'm looking for,
Okay.
right? Maybe as a sales, they need to be a bit outspoken, but when you're looking for technical, they need to be very detailed in how to give a solution,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe if you need someone to become your right hand, right? He or she need to be proactive, challenging
Mm-hmm.
you, giving you some insight, right? So that's what I say is the right people.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
all the same style, right? Because again, if you have all people the same style, then you always go to the same angle,
Right.
right? So you
Right.
might overlook the other angle. So
Mm-hmm.
that is definitely not something, at least for my personal view, I'm not doing kind of things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I
Okay.
prefer to find the right people at the right role so they can contribute to the company with their own style, with their own
Mm-hmm.
character.
Mm-hmm.
But they need to carry the same mindset, same attitude, right? In terms of how we agree on the goal and the vision, right? Then we can move forward together as a team. They can contribute themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inside the bigger ship as a company,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
right? And the third, my view is we need to have the right strategy.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important, right? Because if people are thinking with their own and they don't have something they need to carry together, right? It will become things are not so structured,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I really think as a leader, we need to have the right strategy. Can be top down from the company, but the manager or the leader can cascade down a bit based on the organization itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the fourth one, again, we need to have a control point. Again, once we have all the strategy, right? People, strategy, everything, we need to make sure we have the right control point,
Mm-hmm.
right? So make sure that whatever we agree, whatever we decide earlier, we need to make sure we execute.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just like, okay, people happy do, but no one knows what they're doing. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they can do at the end of the day, but if they're not doing constantly, right, the things will move, for my own view, can be a bit slower,
Mm-hmm.
right? So checkpoint for me, again, is very important. It's not about not trusting the team, but to give them the sense of ownership. It's your
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to KPI, so I want to see your deliverability, right? And last but not least, we need to look back once we complete the whole cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we need to understand, okay, we did great this year, but what we overlooked? Maybe opportunities, some low light that we can learn for
Mm-hmm.
futures to make our own strategy. Or maybe there are good story we can share,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, as a leader, I also have my own leaders, right? My other manager. So I also
Mm-hmm.
can share to him or to her, this is the key learning point from my region last year, right? So either he or she could copy or could share to the other bigger picture
Mm-hmm.
for a bigger region for the overall company, or maybe there are some feedback that he or she will give to me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy, I think you did something, but you can try this area, right? Maybe he or she share from the other region that I also can
Mm-hmm.
learn. Maybe
Right.
there's a whole full end-to-end things that a biggest learn for me, and I will try my best to keep doing that, right? Because I believe that could be something can make a great success for as a leader, as manager, and as for the company itself.
Good. Good. Okay. And what are you most excited about?
I excited about new challenges.
Okay.
right? So, I mean, sometimes when you see new technology,
Mm-hmm.
new idea, new opportunity, that makes me excited because I feel challenged,
Mm-hmm.
right? I like to accept the challenge, right? So I'm not about proving myself I could do, but it's more my personal own pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like to accept the challenge, and I also like to see how I can help to grow my team,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the success sometimes is not about me doing the challenge, but how I can bring my whole team to get and accept the challenge together,
Mm-hmm.
right? So everyone could grow, and when I see they are growing, right, some of them even like moving to the company was scenario, right, but they are doing even better,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that makes me happy, right, because I feel as a manager I've done my job, not
Mm-hmm.
about to achieving the goal, but also to help grooming my team, make
Yeah.
them even better. So I think
Yeah.
that's the part of the excitement of my role, right, and my own career things. That's
That's
what I
cool.
think I can conclude. Sorry.
That's why you're the right person for the job, Jimmy, because you're excited about those challenges and you want to see that progress. And that's, I mean, that's what it takes, right? It's, you I think everything we've talked about today requires people that are not, fans of complacency, right? And you're ready to kind of take on those new challenges and work through problems and fail and learn and grow,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's what this is all about. So that makes sense. Well, thank you, Jimmy, so much for
Thank you,
coming
Sarah.
on and sharing your perspective. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciated your time, your evening time, right? Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can find more content by checking us out at futureoffieldservice.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well as Twitter at the Future of FS. The Future of Field Service podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.